So far, hasn't it? And one of the themes of this conference is the significance of place, why place-based approaches matter. Now, when this theme was announced, I was thrilled, because you see, behavioural science has got a lot to say about place, or as I prefer to call it, context. And in my field of work, context isn't just important, it's absolutely essential. It's like the setting of a stage play. It frames everything. It shapes every outcome. And yet so often context is ignored. Why? I suspect it's because people who are responsible for behaviour change tend to get so hung up on the behaviours they want to change and the people who perform them that they overlook the things that are happening in the background. Things that might be prompting or reinforcing a particular choice or behaviour. Context. So I'm going to talk about why context matters. I'm going to do this by telling you about an intervention SoMoCo delivered with the help of Agilicis, Liverpool City Council and later Hull, and delivered it with the support of the Road Safety Trust. An intervention intended to address high adult pedestrian casualty rates. Let me set the scene. Liverpool had the UK's second highest rate of adult pedestrian casualties, and no one knew why. Theories ranged from road layouts to driver and pedestrian behaviours. But the truth was far more complex. Our first task was to break down this messy problem into well-defined opportunities for change. And when we're faced with a complex problem like this, we consider two key criteria. Scale of change. Will a small percentage shift in behaviour have a meaningful impact on the overall goal or problem? Ease of change. How easy or difficult will it be from a behavioural science perspective to change behaviour? Now, rather than list every opportunity we identified, I will focus on one. Underuse of pedestrian crossings in high-risk areas. Let's explore how we arrived at this. When you look at this heat map showing where adult pedestrian casualties are occurring, the hotspots practically jump out at you, don't they? But here's the thing with bird's eye views. They're great for spotting patterns, but they miss the detail. I like to pair data with real-world observations, and visiting these hotspots, we found two main cluster types. One were clusters of adult pedestrian casualties occurring in streets and roads associated with the nighttime economy, and you can see that area in red there. And the remainder, most of these turned out to be bustling suburban high streets, intersected by 4 lanes of fast-moving traffic. Now, these sites were also in areas of high deprivation, yet they were the heart of the community, drawing in locals during the day, and that's exactly when most of these incidents were happening, in daylight hours, involving local residents simply going about their daily routines. But what really caught our attention was that all of these sites had pedestrian crossings right in the heart of them. So we hypothesised that underuse of pedestrian crossings might go some way to explaining these high casualty rates. Let's zoom into one of these clusters. This is Prescott Road in Liverpool, and the crossing you can see is circled in red. And what we can observe are people scanning for gaps in traffic and then crossing diagonally by sightline rather than using the designated crossing. But what's the scale of this problem? Well, it turned out to be significant. A staggering 22% of adult pedestrian casualties occurring in Liverpool happen within 50 metres of a pedestrian crossing. And that suggests that even a small increase in crossing use could significantly reduce casualties, adult pedestrian casualties. But what about ease of change? How easy or difficult will it be to influence more people to walk to and then use a crossing in their midst? Now, SoMoCo have a framework we created to diagnose behavioural opportunities for change. You are probably more familiar with COM-B, so let's use that. The COM-B model tells us that a behaviour happens when a person has the capability, the opportunity and the motivation to do it. So considering these criteria, increasing crossing use should be easy, right? Yeah? Because, I mean, pedestrians know how to use a crossing. They have capability. The crossings are close by, so they've got the opportunity to use one. And as far as motivation goes, these are risky roads. The crossing is safer, so pedestrians should be motivated to use one. I mean, you would be mad not to. It's a logical choice. Plus, there's no major disincentive here. Walking 30 meters to a crossing, pressing the button, waiting to cross, and then crossing takes about the same amount of time as it does to take your chance and weave your way precariously through 4 lanes of traffic. So, why aren't people doing it anyway? And this is where it all gets a bit, well, weird. Because actually on these streets, people do not even notice the crossings. That's right. When we ask these diagonal crossers to recount everything they'd noticed in the last 30 seconds of their journey, hardly anyone could recall even noticing the crossing. They couldn't recall the crossing. And that's a real problem, right? How do you get somebody to use something they don't even register as there? We have a saying at SoMoCo, find the why, and everything else falls into place. So you tell me, why on these dangerous to cross roads, tough to cross roads, were people not noticing the one thing that would keep them safe? Let's circle back to the COM-B model, but this time let's add a little bit more nuance. Capability, same as before, people are capable of using the crossing. Psychologically, things get a little bit more nuanced. From speaking to pedestrians, we learned that people on these high streets were focused on going about their business as quickly as possible and with minimum effort. We also know that pedestrian attention is limited. Remember that, on noticing things. To explain this, we need to take into account, the very first thing we need to take into account is the impact of poverty. I told you earlier that these are areas of high deprivation. Now, there's my piece of paper. I like to use a little prop. So here we go. People living in deprived areas are more likely to experience chronic stress, poor health, even hunger. And living with scarcity drains so much mental energy that those living with limited means are more likely to make mistakes and take bad decisions than those with bigger financial cushions. And there are some really great academic papers describing this phenomenon, but I like to demonstrate the impact of scarcity like this. So this piece of paper represents your entire mental bandwidth. This is the brain power that governs your attention, your problem solving, and your self-restraint. This is the impact of hunger. This is the effect of being stressed, ill, tired. And the more you've got going on, the less bandwidth you have available. Deprivation wreaks havoc on cognition and decision making. And so people experiencing deprivation are also more likely to engage in something known as selective attention, because guess what? It requires less of that precious bandwidth. And when people are in a familiar setting, like the high street they walk every day, and they're focused on a specific goal, such as getting everything they need for dinner, they still hear and see everything around them, but their brain is able to filter out everything irrelevant to that goal. This selective attention, however, can lead to something known as inattentional blindness. They'll notice a gap in the traffic because they will be scanning, and this seems like the least effortful, quickest path to their goal. But other details, like a crossing located 30 meters away, might be filtered out entirely. Okay, if like me, you sometimes struggle to pay attention after several presentations, and a night of drinking and dancing, and you've just tuned back in, well, first of all, welcome back. You have my sympathy. But you may also find yourself thinking, what on earth is this woman going on about? This woman's describing the zombie apocalypse. But no, these aren't mindless zombies shuffling across the road. Selective attention is actually a highly efficient way of processing information, conserving mental energy when you have a lot on your plate, leaving your mind free to wander onto other things like what's for dinner, did I remember my shopping list, or why is Poundland still called Poundland? I've just spent £1.25 on a multi-bag, or is that just me? But joking aside, we've all been there, haven't we? You know, you're on your regular commute, your mind's wandering, you've got a lot on your plate, and suddenly you're like, whoa, I can't even remember how I got home. Inattentional blindness. Now, getting back to our high street. If a speeding car suddenly enters their field of vision, people in this mental state are perfectly capable of snapping out of there, switching to full alert mode, ready to take action. But here's the thing. Sometimes these events happen so fast that even when the brain is fully alert, there's just not enough time to react. And that's one of the reasons why adult pedestrian casualty rates in Liverpool are as high as they are. Okay, let's move on to opportunity. Crossings are near or on desire lines, so yeah, we could say the opportunity is there. But socially, if most people around you are diagonal crossing, it kind of feels normal. So this reinforces a negative behaviour. So let's pop across by that. Turning to motivation, there are lots of different drivers of motivation. Let's, for simplicity, keep it to two. Motivation can be driven by reflective, analytical thinking. Now, ideally, pedestrians would reflect on the risks. 4 lanes of traffic, a bit dodgy, walking to the crossing, bit of a faff. But hey, under the circumstances. And there you go. There's your motivation. But we know that's probably not happening, because in highly familiar settings, automatic motivation tends to take over. Crossing by habit feels safe enough, because we've walked that road before. But that handy rule of thumb turns out to be a bias. It's giving people a sense of security that just doesn't match the risk. So although at first it looked like all 3 elements were in place, by digging deeper into context, we have uncovered a number of behavioural blockers that, unchecked, will continue to drive this risky behaviour. Now, fortunately, behavioural science is not just good at explaining things that on the surface appear counterintuitive. Once you've understood the why, it offers a range of levers or strategies that are grounded in research and science that overcome, reduce or correct bias and error when embedded into intervention design. Now, there's no absolute certainty these will work, but you've just given yourself the best odds of success. So what strategies did we choose and how did we embed them? To overcome inattentional blindness driven by familiarity, you can use visual salience. People are programmed to notice things that are novel, visually arresting, and unusual. So we made the crossings hard to miss by installing a light box at the top with arrows directing your attention down to the footway and wrapping the poles in reflective vinyl. But attracting attention isn't enough. We need to compel people to walk up to 30 metres to the crossing. To prompt people to move towards the crossing, we applied visual cues on railings and pavements, which guided pedestrians, tapping into the brain's proclivity for pattern recognition. And in order, so we go back, in order to build and embed new habits, we use something called a liberation likelihood. By reducing, and we did this, by reducing the crossing wait time at off-peak periods, we leveraged a strategy of reward and reinforce. Every time somebody who walks that crossing experiences a speedy light change, they have a positive experience, and that helps with habit formation. Now, an even better way to leverage selective attention is to go with the flow, to go with it. So align the thing you want them to do with their intrinsic goal. Remember, faster equals better here. So the symbols on the crossing footway were not just bold and authoritative, they also conveyed an impression of speed. And one local resident who woke up one morning to see this road thought that someone in the council had gone crazy for Faster Mario. And I loved that. I loved that because it meant that the first time that person saw those road designs, their immediate association was that of speed. Faster equals better. That's that crossing. Above all, we kept things simple. Everything was designed to work on an automatic and intuitive level. The traditional approach, educating people about the risks, piling on more information, would have further added to cognitive load, the wrong solution to this problem. And here it is in situ. This is Prescott Road in Liverpool. And the intervention you see here is tightly tailored to the insights we've uncovered by investigating not just the behaviour, but the context in which it is occurring. Did it work? In behavioural science, scale matters. Professor David Halfon, who pioneered the first governmental nudge unit in the world, is quoted as saying a small percentage change in behaviour amongst a large population is a great result. And actually, between 5 and 10% is pretty much the gold standard. And I know what you're thinking, bloody get on with it. You know, did you achieve a 5 or 10% increase in crossings or not? Not. We achieved a 14% increase in crossings at the local trial site. A pre and post blinded trial, which coded and analysed over 4,000 individual crossings within a 30-metre radius, demonstrated a statistically significant result. And in plain English, that meant the degree of change was so pronounced it could not have been attributed to chance. Furthermore, there was no change to driver speed or behaviour, no unintended consequences were recorded. Wow. You know, wouldn't it be great just to end on that bombshell? But I love a good twist in the tale, don't you? What I didn't tell you in my introduction is that we also decided to take the intervention and test it in another city. Oh, now Tanya from Agilicis had the unenviable task of trying to find a suitable trial site that would match the context in Liverpool. And I say unenviable because we were in lockdown at the time. So Tanya had to rely on that bird's eye view we spoke about earlier. And from a bird's eye view, the site seemed perfect. It seemed to match the local site in risk and deprivation. But when COVID restrictions were lifted and we visited the site, it revealed a very different picture. Let's just remind ourselves of the context of the Liverpool sites. Lots of shops surrounded by dense housing. These are local people who are being hit by cars on their local high street. Now let's take a closer look at the Hull site. In Hull, the context differed hugely. This isn't a residential area. The people use this crossing to reach a hospital rather than a high street. So unsurprisingly, casualties were not local. They came from a 4-mile radius and one didn't even live in Hull. Familiarity and scarcity aren't in play. People involved in collisions came from varied socio-economic backgrounds. Selective attention, path-well-travelled bias simply didn't apply. Now, as I said at the beginning,
we are running over.
We are doing 20 on this and 10 on that, so
Fine, okay.
That's what's funny. Yeah. So familiar and scarcity aren't in play. As I said at the beginning, context isn't just a backdrop to be ignored, it will influence behaviour in profound ways. And I could have just ended my presentation today with Liverpool, our remarkable success. But that would mean that I assume the Hull trial was a failure, that it has no value. Some ways, yes. But it's that contrast, the success in Liverpool and the shortfall in Hull, that really drives home the importance of context in behaviour change. The Liverpool side was the result of a meticulous diagnosis, and the treatment was designed to address the cause. But just as an antibiotic is a powerful medicine, it's a poor remedy for someone with a cold. The context in Hull, though superficially similar, turned out to be profoundly different. It required different tailoring, a different intervention. When we overlook context, we risk creating solutions with limited impact. But when we understand it, we truly grasp it, we unlock the potential to drive real lasting change. Context isn't just important, context is king. Thank you. I'd like to invite Tanya to the stage. Thank you very much.